Hey, what's up? Sorry, I wasn't quite ready for this. In the thumbnail, it looks like I'm dabbing. There we go. I just had a shower. We're almost to the end of part 1. A shoobity doop, a shoobity doo. This one ain't working. Let's try it now. A shoobity doop ba doop ba doo. Ba-ba-ba-da-ba-ba-doo. All right, here we go. Chapter 47. Aeona. By the goddess! Aeona's hand flew to her lips. She immediately yanked it back down to her waist, straightening her robes in embarrassment. The creature spoke again.
My lady, I have no information regarding a goddess. I was designed to assist travelers. How may I help you?
The heroes were arrayed in a defensive phalanx, with Pong Jung and Teres just behind the vanguard. Pong Jung laughed.
Friends, relax. It's only the sentinel.
He walked through the line to touch the stone being. Nothing happened except for the creature turning to face him. The wizard looked back.
He was designed to help travelers reach their destinations. There are said to be dozens of them scattered throughout the mantle.
Portillion raced up to touch it. The sentinel turned to face him. Nothing happened for a moment. Portillion gushed. Sentinel, tell us, what else will we find here? The sentinel was quiet for a moment, then it spoke.
There are 3 creations here, at the end of each pathway.
He waved one arm towards each path. Portillion laughed. Can you describe them? The sentinel produced a noise not unlike small gears clicking together.
Yes.
Portillion smiled and looked back at the group. Placing his hand on Pong Jung's shoulder, he spoke again. What are they, Sentinel? More whirring. Martok and Reynold lowered their weapons. They looked suddenly bored.
One is a mirror. It displays the place in the upper world that the viewer wishes to see.
Portillion breathed in, eyes wide. He turned back and smiled, mouth half open as if to say, Wow. The sentinel's gears whirred again.
One is a basin. It provides healing water. A small vessel may be used to carry said water, but the healing factor fades with time.
Portillion slapped Pong Jung on the back. The odd man flinched.
The third creation is a sextant. A skilled navigator can use it to plot their course through the mantle. Once the course is plotted, the creation will produce a map with the correct coordinates.
Portillion stroked his chin. And Sentinel? The being nodded.
Yes?
Once a map is produced, how would one use it to find their destination? Pong Jung smiled. The sentinel responded.
With a wayfinder.
Portillion scratched his head. And where would we find one of these wayfinders? The sentinel was quiet for a long time. The sound of scabbards shifting and boots scratching sand was all they could hear. Everyone held their breath.
I'm sorry. I do not have that information.
Pong Jung laughed and turned to face the group. He reached into his tunic and drew out a pendant on a silver chain. It was a metal triangle, rounded on each side, with a crystal circle in the center. As he displayed it, tiny black flakes coalesced together to form words and numbers. He lifted the pendant over his head and handed it to Portillion, who gasped. He whipped around to face the party. The numbers change! He waved it around, laughing as the flecks shifted and moved to form different numbers. Aeona stepped forward to investigate, then looked back at the group. He's right. She turned to face Pong Jung, squinting and studying his. Damn it. She turned to face Pong Jung, squinting and studying his expression. Where did you find this? Pong Jung shrugged.
I've forgotten. I'm sorry.
Aeona glowered. Portillion laughed. Your mercy. Where there's one, there may be others. As the group moved in to study the sentinel and the wayfinder, Grundle surveyed their surroundings. Aeona felt a stirring in her chest as he moved. He was such a brave protector. She was so lucky to have found him. I only pray that he will love me as much as I love him. Yeah, she loves him. Why not? Chapter 48. Reynold. Reynold sat down on the edge of the dry fountain near the sentinel and yanked off one of his boots. Martok remained at attention, sword drawn, hilt up. Reynold flexed his toes and let out a slow groan. Gods, Martok, how do you do it? 2 days of walking and I'm spent. Martok smiled for a second, then returned to ready position. My lord, our training does not allow for thoughts of exhaustion. Reynold set his stockinged foot gingerly on the ground and stretched his back. Low cracking noises popped along the sides of his spine. He stretched to one side and then the other. He looked up at the wizard. What about you, wizard? Do you ever get tired? Pong Jung wagged his head. Not usually, my lord. I rarely travel this far from the great tree. Reynold pulled off his other boot and stretched his toes with one hand. He lazily ran the other through the shallow water of the defunct fountain. Oh, yeah? I guess your people do most of the work around the village, huh? Pong Jung said nothing for a while. Then he spoke. To be truthful, sir, we have no need of food or drink. No reason for sleep or entertainment. We do not give birth or require medical attention. There is really no need to travel in this realm. Martok chuffed. Reynold looked at his disgust and chuckled. Really, Martok, is it so despicable? The idea of never having children, never having to see a doctor? I have to say, it seems pretty great. Unless, of course, you think about drugs or cards or strong drink. He winked at Pong Jung. Or tail, am I right? A sweet round backside and a bit of the old peach pie. The two men looked at the wizard, waiting for a reaction. Pong Jung said nothing. Reynold and Martok laughed until tears formed in their eyes. Reynold slapped the surface of the water with delight. Truly, Jung, you are a strange creature. I wonder, if we took you topside, would you take part in our enjoyments? Reynold jumped to his feet and strolled over to the man. Pong Jung stood motionless. If he was afraid of the young lord, he wasn't giving any indication. Reynold watched his eyes. Just then, the sentinel barked behind him. Reynold jumped.
Pang Jang cannot leave the mantle. He is joined to the tree and cannot leave.
Pong Jung looked furious. He bounced around Reynold and swung his fist at the sentinel. A rush of fire and lava burst forth from his fist. Martok leapt forward and threw him to the ground, fire singeing the huge knight's armor and crisping the ends of his beard. Lord Reynold drew his sword and leveled it at the wizard in one sudden motion, face contorted with fear and contempt. You will not use your powers in our presence, knave! Pong Jung glanced up from the earth, smoke still rising from his arm. The sentinel was damaged, bits of stone skin melting away, revealing ancient gears and springs, as well as a sort of rudimentary vein system, presumably channeling water or some other liquid throughout its body. The creature seemed unaffected by the attack. Expressionless as always, it stood mute, awaiting the next question. The three men breathed heavily, a thick silence hanging over them. Anticipation groaned. Reynold's blade gleamed in the dying firelight. I do not believe it, Pong Jung moaned, voice as high and weak as a child's. I cannot. So let me try that again. I do not believe it, Pong Jung moaned, voice as high and weak as a child's. I cannot. This joker's full of surprises. Wait, let's say that again. This joker's full of surprises. Huh. So, Trouble in Paradise. Homeboy just shot up a robot. Chapter 49. Grundle. Grundle was awestruck. The sentinel was a marvel of ancient engineering, the great tree a miracle of unknown origin. But this was a work of art, one of the last remnants of a civilization few even knew had existed. Like the Null Gate, the mirror was finely crafted and covered with symbols. Unlike the gate, however, this was delicate, shiny, and expensive looking. It stood about 6 feet tall and nearly as wide. The edge of the lens glowed with a strange pinkish fog, similar to what they'd seen as they'd crossed the magical bridge to the area surrounding the great tree. Let's see. Ayanna walked around it, ran her fingers along its surface. Grundle bristled. Beloved mother, it isn't safe. You mustn't. She smiled at her lover, leaned against the thing coquettishly, stretching out her body in a more sensual way than was seemly. Grundle dipped his eyes. My lady. Ayanna skipped back to his side and laughed. She lifted his eyes to see hers and took a minute to gaze upon him. Grundle, thank you. She kissed him softly on the cheek, clasping her fingers around his gauntleted wrist. Look, you can see us. Grundle raised his eyes, resisting the urge to smile back. There, in the pinkish haze of the mirror, he saw them. A ridiculous pairing of gorgeous Lunari priestess and monstrous plotting Vorak. Would that he were smaller, less bulky, more outgoing, not crippled by self-doubt. Next to her, he looked like an overcooked pancake on a mossy boulder. Not for the first time, he questioned her sanity for choosing him. Ayanna squeezed his arm, as best she could anyway, through his pockmarked iron skin. She smiled. We make a lovely couple, don't you think? Grundle grunted. Yes, my lady. She pinched his cheek. You know, Grundle, when we're alone, you can call me anything you like. Her smile was so soft, so kind. All of his negative thoughts about himself vanished into the darkness. He closed his eyes and let her hand caress his lips. Then, suddenly, she was moving. Beloved mother. He opened his eyes to see her running toward the mirror. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Just beyond Ayanna's racing form, he could see the hazy image of Joran Barlow, a nasty spray of blood pouring from his back, the tip of a dagger following behind. And there, between his arm and chest, the cruel, contorted face of that most terrible woman. Faylene, goddess, no. Ayanna drew out her hammer and hurled it as she leapt into the mirror, screaming holy murder. Oh, goddess. Oh, no. Shit. Oh, my God. Did not see that coming. Hmm. Yeah. I think I had the idea of this and then I wrote it up the other way and then this I wrote later, but I like it in this order. You don't know what I'm talking about. The point is this moment with Joran is a big deal. We haven't heard from Joran this whole book. So like what's that about, right? Anywho, let's I'm going to do one more chapter and then that will be it for a bit. Chapter 50. Ayanna. The mirror had cleared up almost immediately upon Grundle activating his control unit. She heard sounds blaring in his earpiece, clearly approximating the sounds of a modern city. Car horns in the distance, a slight breeze picking up garbage, a dog barking. Off to one side, she thought she could hear singing, low and slow, almost mournful. They both saw the image, however, and it was unexpected to say the least. Joran Barlow, dressed in a natty suit and smiling, was addressing a citizen on a sidewalk. The woman was hunched, poor by the look of her clothes and homemade haircut, a few moles on her face, and wearing a crooked smile. She was fawning over him like a fan. Ayanna's heart melted. Here he was, performing the role of the humble hero, taking the time to honor a woman of lesser means. She worked out the timeline. It must be the day of the captain's funeral. She couldn't think of any other reason why he'd be wearing a suit. She prayed for him. He'd gone through so much. First the war, then the uprising. His subsequent fall from grace, losing his wife and child, the murder of his girlfriend, the craziness of years of spacebound conflict, and the added pressure of his newfound celebrity on top of all that grief, not to mention having to serve one of the most despicable women in the galaxy. She prayed that he would find happiness, and more, that he might find love. Perhaps this glimpse of him was to remind her how much he meant to her, to give her the strength to keep on going. She thanked the goddess for the blessing of this vision. Suddenly, everything changed. Her eyes went wide as she comprehended what was happening. The hunched woman had drawn a knife and a gun from her rags and shoved them into his chest. Ayanna recognized the gun. It was the same type of weapon Faline had carried on the Sturmvolk. Ayanna's heart broke as Joran's was obliterated, pieces of it flying out of the hole in his back. She knew before she'd even shifted her weight that he was dead. She heard Grundle stumble and gasp, but it didn't register. The only thing that mattered now was destroying Joran's killer. She drew her hammer, charged it with arcane power, and hurled it into the lens, breaking it into a million pieces. As it burst, the whole shape of reality burst with it. A rush of air sucked past her, making Grundle gasp as oxygen left his lungs. With Ayanna's violent action, the structure of space had completely gone awry. A rip in the shape of reality split into a panoramic view of the actual city street. Grundle screamed, "No! Ayanna! Wait!" But she was running. She leapt over the base of the broken mirror and was through. Faline. The woman in disguise was Faline. Ayanna surged forward, hammer pulsing in her hand. "I will not let you kill him. I will not let him die." End of book one. Whatever I'm calling it. Shit. Oh. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Into the next part we shall go. Oh boy. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking with me. Tell me what you think of this second book. I really need to know. My ego requires it. Holler at your boy. Yeah, take it easy. Peace.